good morning, good afternoon. We are very happy to have you here with us again. This is the third and final session in a series of webinars. And we had great response from the audience and hundreds of participants so far. We intend to continue offering training and support, but please do not wait for us to contact you. You can feel free to reach out to us at any time or any question you have. All the relevant contact details will be available in the emails that you will receive after the webinar. So for today's session about monitoring and how it can be made easy, we will have Ifat as our host. Ifat will walk us through how we can use the GrowSphere monitoring tools to help you irrigate more precisely, and also how we can analyze and get to agronomic insights and improve our irrigation decisions. A little bit about Ifat. Ifat has been with us at Netafim for 20 years. Most of this time in the digital farming department. She holds a bachelor degree in science and agriculture from the Hebrew University. And she is an agronomist that specializes in sensors and IoT devices in agriculture. So without further ado, let's hand it over to Ifat.
Thank you, Avi, and thank you for this opportunity to meet with you and share information and my strong passion for the monitoring field. I hope that within the next hour, you will be curious enough to try it yourself and get your own experience. We have a lot to cover, so let's proceed directly to the presentation. Today, I will introduce the third part of the GrowSphere webinars. The first two sessions, led by Avi and Itzik, introduced the GrowSphere operating system and the Max controller. Today, I will introduce the GrowSphere solution for monitoring your field. A quick reminder for previous sessions, the GrowSphere is an intuitive all-in-one operating system that lets the farmer seamlessly manage all his daily irrigation and fertigation activities, starting from monitoring your field, setting your fertigation plan, executing, validating, and making sure that everything was implemented as expected. It is a perfect blend of hardware and software for best results and user experience. Today, we will discuss the advantage of using agronomic monitoring system. I will start by reviewing the range of sensors available in our portfolio. We will discuss the key factors to consider when selecting a sensor, and I will give some guidelines for your sensor installation, where to install them, and the best time for doing it. I will present the GrowSphere device for monitoring to have a better understanding of the device's capabilities. And the last part of the presentation will be dedicated to the graphs on the cloud, how to present them, key features, and how to interpret the data. Are you ready? Let's start. Imagine yourself getting into your car, switching to automatic mode, and driving towards your destination on a road with no traffic lights, signs, or warning signals. Would you feel comfortable doing it? The car represents your irrigation system. Driving on autopilot without paying attention to warning signals is comparable to using an irrigation controller with predefined irrigation schedules that disregard warning signs like extreme weather condition, plant stress, and so on. Both cases are challenging, dangerous, and might cause irreversible damage. Now let's focus on the field. By using soil sensor, I can track my irrigation and make sure it is sufficient to wet all the soil profile as expected. I can follow my plant's behavior, see when it extracts most of the water, and schedule my next irrigation accordingly. Plant sensors will indicate the plant status. Weather information will help to adjust the next irrigation by time and quantity. With hydraulic sensors, I can follow my irrigation system performance. Different sensors can improve our irrigation scheduling. By using sensor, you can save water, save energy, save money, and get better yields and better quality. So let's move to the sensor portfolio. We have 4 sensor groups: the soil sensors, plant sensors, environmental sensors, and hydraulic. We offer a wide range of sensors to suit most requirements and needs. So with our soil sensor, we can measure the water tension, the volumetric soil moisture, soil temperature, and soil salinity. Sensors can indicate the depth of irrigation, how deep and how fast the water is being depleted. Do I irrigate enough? Which soil layer the plant is extracting the water from? And when is it done? Should I irrigate earlier? Was the rain yesterday effective? Did the rain percolate the soil? Can I postpone next irrigation? The first sensor we'll focus on is the tensiometer. The tensiometer is the most common sensor. It measures the actual soil water tension, which indicates the effort required by the root system to extract water from the soil. It is actually simulating the root activity. That is the reason many growers find it a reliable sensor. The tensiometer requires preparation. It needs also along the season preparation and calibration, and along the season, it requires maintenance. We have it available in 3 different lengths, in 30, 60, and 90 centimeter. The next sensor is the NetaCap. The NetaCap is a profile probe that has both soil moisture and soil temperature measurement. On the top of the sensor, at this part, there is an ambient temperature. It is the most preferable sensor for the past 2 years. Easy installation and no maintenance. Ideal for all root zones with any soil type. We have 6 different lengths of this sensor in 2 different types. The green V sign represents the sensor location, the measuring point on the probe. It's important to remember that we have different lengths because we can implement we can have the best sensor for the specific crop. Shorter probe will ease the installation. If there is no need for a long one, use the short one because then you will have a better control of the installation process and eventually you will have better results. The next sensor is the NetaSense. The NetaSense is a point sensor. It's a volumetric water content sensor, relatively big, measures and represents a large soil volume. The installation is relatively tough, but once it is installed, you can leave it forever. It doesn't require any maintenance. The next sensor in the list is the SM150T. This sensor is also a point sensor and a volumetric water content sensor. It is relatively small, and that is why it fits substrate and growing in pots. It is suitable for most containers. For typical installation, we can use 2 or 3 sensors in different depths according to the plant root zone and the watering requirements. The lower sensor I would place at the edge of the expected wetting point. On the right-hand side, there is an illustration of the subsurface drip irrigation. And if we have if we use a subsurface drip irrigation, I would recommend having the upper sensor above the sensor itself, above the dripper itself, to track the lateral movement. The next sensor is the WET 150. This is the brand new sensor just released 2 weeks ago. It is a multi-parameter sensor that provides 3 measurements: soil moisture, EC, and soil temperature. It is a relatively small sensor, easy to install, similar to the previous one we just saw. It comes with 2 calibrations for mineral soils and peat mix. And we can track also the soil salinity. If there is a salinization tendency that requires the deep wash, we will be able to see it. So these are all the sensors that we have, the soil sensor that we have in our portfolio. Just a quick illustration how it looks in the field for some of them. On the right-hand side, you can see that there are 3 SM150T sensors in 3 different lengths, different depths. Here the hole is open, but obviously do not forget to cover the hole when you finish the installation. And don't forget to sign the cables before you cover the hole, otherwise it will be difficult to know which sensor is which. Okay, so when we want to present the sensors on the graph, this is an example of the information you get from the sensor, from the soil sensor. The graph, this specific graph represents 6 soil moisture sensors from 6 different depths. It is the NetaCap sensor. The x-axis is the timeline, and the y-axis is the moisture by volume in percentage. Each time the chart rises means that there was a change in the soil moisture level. It might be due to irrigation or rain. Slopes represent the plant uptake or depletion. Free water goes down. So you have a full picture of your soil wetted profile and the water status in each one of the layers. You can see that the upper 2 sensors that are represented by the light green and light blue, they are not influenced by irrigation. And most probably there are no roots on these specific layers because there is no significant activity. The next group of sensors is the plant sensors. They measure the changes in the trunk and the plant stem diameter. It indicates the plant status, if it is a good health or under stress. We have 2 types of dendrometers. The upper one is the trunk diameter measurement, and the other one the stem diameter. Their installation is quite easy, but there is a maintenance required because they have a spring. Here is the spring, and once it is fully tensioned, you have to release it. So this is the only maintenance that is required. And this is how it looks in the field. So on the right-hand side, this is the trunk dendrometer, and these are the stem diameter that you can use also for small trunks. The graph, this is how the graph looks. We have the raw data that represents the day and night changes. How much is it is shrinking or expanding, the trunk shrinkage and expansion. And you can see the trend, if there is a growth or not. The unit of measurement of the y-axis is micron, and the x-axis is the timeline. Besides the raw data, there are 2 calculations. The MDS, from top to bottom, indicates the plant's shrinkage along the day. Higher value indicates plant activity and might indicate higher water stress. The DG, the daily growth, from top to top, indicates the plant growth, the delta. Higher value indicates growth. Both calculations are provided and can be presented in the graph. So this is the raw data, the upper graph. The second one is the MDS. If there was a big growth, the bar will be big. And the daily growth, if there is a big shrinkage along the day, the bar will be big. And the daily growth, if there is no growth, you will see no bars. And if you have a big growth, there is a difference between this top to the other one. It will be provided on the chart. The third group is the environmental sensors. We have the air temperature measurement, air humidity, solar radiation, wind speed and wind direction, rain and ET. By getting weather data, you can adjust irrigation to weather condition. Will it be an extremely hot day? Is it supposed to rain today? You will have much better crop management. Wind data, for example, is essential for information regarding spraying your field. Harvesting planner, will the weather condition allow you to harvest today? Will it be possible to get into the field? The products that we have are the weather station. The weather station can be connected via API or connected directly to the MAX. We have a local rain collector, and we have a temperature humidity that will be released the next couple of months. The next, this is how it looks in the field. On the left-hand side, this is the rain collector and the weather station. The fourth group, the hydraulic sensor, the actual flow rate and quantity, and the water pressure. It will provide actual irrigation information versus planned irrigation and will indicate if the planned irrigation was fully implemented. It will improve irrigation strategy, detect exceptional hydraulic conditions over and under flow rate. It might indicate also drip clogging if you have a change in the pressure, or the opposite, if an animal or machinery has defected or torn the pipeline, you will also be able to see it. We have the water meter. This is the water meter. It can be connected to all types of water meters. We have the pressure sensor and the pressure switch. Now, this is a graph where the irrigation events are presented. The y-axis is the quantity of irrigation implemented to the field, and the x-axis is the timeline. And you see that the bars represent the length or the quantity that was implemented. The higher the bar is, the bigger the irrigation. Now, choosing the right sensor and installation guidelines. We deal with different crops, different demands. Each crop is growing differently and requires different treatment. Permanent crops, field crops, different height, different foliage densities. Which sensor will be the best to use for this specific crop? If the access to the field might be difficult, don't choose to work with sensor that requires maintenance. Some crops require water stress, for example, to increase the sugar level. Not all sensors can function in such soil water tension. And as for the root depth, if the plant has deep roots, choose a long profile sensor. It will ease your sensor installation and provide you with the best information. Now, the uniformity. Is your field relatively in uniform in terms of soil type, soil volume, the topography, crop type, and variety? Will you use the same growing method? And what about the irrigation method? Different conditions require different irrigation scheduling. Monitoring one block will not reflect on the other block. We have the hydraulic deployment. If you have hydraulic limitation, or you split your field to some irrigation blocks according to different factors, like the crop, age, and variety. If you have blocks that require different irrigation scheduling, it will be good to monitor each one of them separately. And the last thing is the budget. In the end of it, it's the matter of the budget. If you can have more devices and get more information, you will be able to get you will have a better decision. A better decision will be made. But do not forget at least 2 monitoring stations for better decision making. It means that we do not want to put all the eggs in one basket. If something is, I don't know, doesn't represent, seems to be a bit strange, it's better to have two monitoring stations that you will be able to compare between them and be sure that you take the right decision. Now, when to install the sensors? Normally, I would recommend to do it shortly after planting or germination, because the plant is small and you will have minimal root damage. Other option is before the rainy season, because sometimes you think that before the rainy season it's no worth installing sensor, but I find it a good idea because it enables the soil to stabilize before the rain. The rain will compact the soil on the sensor, and besides that, the crop is generally in dormant, so you will be able to define critical points. Where to install? First of all, we talked about it. It should be in a representative place in terms of size, health, vegetation of the plant. Do not install the sensor at the edge of the field because it's not representative. It is more dusty, you have a machinery movement. So you have to be in a representative place inside the field. But choose a place that it will be easy to track, to go and see the sensors. And if you have to maintain something, it should be easy to reach. Now, the sensor itself, the micro, it should be about 15 centimeters away from the dripper in the active root zone and the wetted area. This is crucial because when you install the sensor where you can install it and it is far from the dripper, it will not get wet by irrigation and you will think that the sensor is not working well. So be sure you are in the active root zone. Now, as for SDI, subsurface drip irrigation, first find the dripper. Don't do it when you dig, don't do it in the place that you wish to have the sensor located. Go a bit further, find the dripper, and then measure according to the distance of the dripper, measure up to the place that you want to install the sensor. So you know where the sensor is, the dripper is supposed to be, and then go 15 centimeters away. This is very important to do it. And as for the micro sprinklers, about 1/3 to 1/2 the distance from the sprinkler to the edge of the wetted area. Now, you have in the picture on the left-hand side, you see there are zip ties. And this is something just to locate the drop, okay, on the lateral to force the water to penetrate the soil where the sensor is. Because sometimes there is a drop migration along the lateral and the water doesn't penetrate. And again, you would think that the sensor is not working, but eventually it is not getting wet by irrigation. Okay, so this was the basic, and now let's move to the one. The one is a standalone monitoring unit based on cellular communication. It means that before you decide that you wish to work with the cellular-based device, you have to make sure that you have a full cellular coverage. This is the basic. Otherwise, you cannot use the device. Now, the one is provided with a SIM card, a global SIM card. We have the one with 3 different configurations. You can have it with the integrated solar panel, as seen in this picture. you can have it with an external solar panel. Now, the external solar panel is made to absorb the maximum sun. So you can install the panel above the canopy, and then you will have maximum sun absorption. And the last configuration is relevant for specific places. It comes without the solar panel at all. So for row crops, vegetables, I would use the integrated solar panel, and for orchards, places, crops, I would use the external solar panel to put, as said, the solar panel above the canopy. Now, as for the sensor configuration or entries for sensors, we have 3 analog input sensors, 2 digital input sensors, and 1 serial sensor. These are all the sensors compatible with the one. We talked about all of them. You see that they're just presented according to the entries that I just mentioned. So this is the group of sensors. Now let's move to the graphs. We will talk about the graphs on the workspace. We will have some highlights and capabilities, how to present it on the cloud. We will learn to define critical points on the graph, and we will go through some graph interpretations. So this is the workspace. This is the workspace. In order to go to the graph section, you have the red arrow on the right-hand side and the graph. Once you click on it, you have off the list of the devices on the left-hand side. You can choose which sensor you wish to present. In this graph I chose 3 soil moisture sensors, or actually 3 depths of the NetaCap soil moisture sensor. So we have 3 different measurements. The upper one is the red one, is installed in 20 centimeter. The second one, the green one, in 30 centimeter, and the last one in 40 centimeter. Now, this is the graph of the water meter. The graph of the water meter can be presented in 2 different ways. This presentation is the daily irrigation. It means how much water was implemented in one day. And there is another option to move to the events, the irrigation events. In the irrigation event, you can see all the multiple events. So if I'm irrigating several times a day, I will get several bars in each one of those days. Highlights and capabilities. We have the option to ungroup and group the sensor view, the graph view. In this slide, you see that we have 2 graphs. The upper one is the soil moisture sensors, and the lower one is the irrigation events. Now, these are each one of the sensor type will be presented in its individual graph. Now I added also the rain collector. I can choose from my list which one of the sensor I would like to present, and I can add it. If it is a sensor that was not presented, its sensor group was not presented, it will open a new chart. And now I have 3 different bars, 3 different graphs. Now, the information is very good. Sometimes I will find it more easy to have them grouped together, and then it will be much easier to track it and to interpret the information. So these are grouped graph. You see all the sensors that we saw before are now grouped, and they are all presented. So now it is much easier to see when was the irrigation implemented, and you see the influence on each one of the soil moisture measurement, and you see also that in this gap, when there was no irrigation at all, there was a rain event. Second thing is to save graphs. Once I have a graph that I'm happy with, I worked hard to create it. Not hard, but I created a graph that represents many things that I wanted to compare between them. I can save the graph. On the right-hand side, you have 3 dots, and then you have save. And then you can give it a name, and it is being added to a list of saved graphs. Here you have my graphs, and you have the list of saved other graphs that I saved before, and now I'm adding this graph. So I can create many graphs from different places that I wish to compare, maybe the same depth in each one of in my block. I have several stations. I can create a graph from all of them and save it, and I will not have to do it each time again. Now, as for the threshold, the range that you wish to stay in between the lines, you can create your own threshold for each one of the sensors. First, you go to the tree where the sensor is, when you can choose the sensor. I chose the Netasense in 30 centimeter. I found it is the most representative, and this one I want to create threshold to. Now, the threshold allows me to create actually ranges. So I can define what will be the upper range or the lower range, and then I will keep myself in between the lines. So first of all, this is how it is done. Very easily, you can define. If you want lower, you can put the value here, and then you go to higher and put another value. By the way, you can choose from, you can have threshold from different sensor. It means that if you wish to irrigate according to the upper sensor, you want to open the valve, and you want to close the valve according to the deeper sensor, you can create an upper sensor for one of the sensors, and then go to the second sensor and create the lower thresholds. When you have it defined, you can go to the graph itself, and when you click on the 3 dots here, you just choose the threshold. Then it will be presented on the graph. It will start when you create those thresholds. And this is how it looks. So the threshold gets the color of the sensor that you defined it according to it. Here, there are both red colors, but if I have set threshold for the green sensor, it would have been green, the color. And then on the map itself, once you define thresholds and you cross those lines, you will get, it's a bit tiny, but you can see that the device itself turned to red here. It means that you crossed the line, and maybe you should open the valve and irrigate immediately, or because actually those thresholds are giving you the information that it will make it very easy once you get into the graph and you see those thresholds, you want to stay in between those lines. It means that once you cross it, you know that something went wrong. Okay, so these are the thresholds. And the last one is, I want to share with you, is the leading sensor. The leading sensor is a sensor that you find is the most informative, or something that you wish to know to have it just in front of you all the time, the value of it. So to define the leading sensor, you go to the workspace and you click on the three dots. You have the leading sensor. You choose it from a list, which one is the leading sensor, and that's it. Once it is chosen, you have the value all the time on the map, the last readings. Okay, this is the leading sensor. Now, how we define the critical points. First, you choose the graph that you wish to work on it, okay? This is the maybe the leading sensor graph, something you would like to irrigate. That's the one that you feel it's the most representative. So you choose the graph, you present it, and then you zoom in a bit. It will ease the interpretation. And look now at the graph. You can clearly see, first of all the irrigations that were implemented, because the soil moisture rises at the point of the irrigation. Now, after each irrigation, there is a sharp decline here and here, all of them. This is the free water that goes down by gravitation. This action represents the water loss because the irrigation was implemented, but the soil is not capable of absorbing the water. It depends on the soil water holding capacity that differs between soil types. So in a certain point, here, there is a breaking point when the charts start to flatten and the soil moisture start to stabilize over here. There is a breaking point and it starts to flatten, okay? This point represents the soil field capacity. In order to reduce the water loss, you have to define first to find the field capacity, and irrigation should be above the field capacity to ensure to flush the salts, but not too much higher than that, because then, like here, you will lose the water to the depth. When you have more than one single soil sensor, like it is presented here in this slide, you will see that once there is a decrease in the upper layer moisture, the plant will look for the water in a deeper layer. This might indicate on your refill point time to irrigate, but there might be other agronomic parameters to consider. So the blue line will represent the saturation or over-irrigating. The green will represent the field capacity. And the red one, probably the refill point. Let's move to some graph interpretation. Here I presented the irrigation events graph. Not all the irrigation are the same in terms of length and quantity. You can see that this irrigation event was much higher than this one, or obviously from those ones. And you see that there are differences in their intervals. Here I irrigate every second day. And here there is a gap of a week. And here I move to irrigation every day. And there must be an influence on the soil moisture as well. Looking at the soil moisture graph, we see inconsistency. Sometimes the moisture rises, like here, and sometimes there is a decrease. The soil dries out, like here. There is a missing information which present only the soil moisture sensors. So when we present it all together, we have a better view. Now here as said before, the intervals are short. And here we have a long interval. And when we see the influence, we see the graph of the soil moisture, you see that when the quantity is bigger, the irrigation was longer, you see the influence on the soil moisture. And when we change the interval, also there is an influence. Here, by the way, there is a gap, but the quantity that was implemented was almost the same, was probably the same, but still there is a decrease. Maybe it is because of the interval, maybe because it was maybe because of the weather. Here, obviously, because the lack of irrigation, there was a big decrease. And once I irrigate again, but I irrigated in short intervals, I see that there is an increase in the soil moisture. So this is how we can actually track the graph. And when we put all the measurement together in one graph, it makes it much easier to interpret. So this is the reason I highly recommend on adding, besides the soil moisture sensors, also a water meter or pressure switch, something that will indicate the irrigation, and it will make it easier to understand what causes the changes in the soil moisture. Now, after doing that, I added this blue line just to show you that in a certain point, when it started to stabilize, after all these interval changes and quantity, eventually I reached the point that when I opened the valve and I ended the irrigation, it ended almost at the same point, and there was no too much water loss. If you remember, I explained about the field capacity and the water loss. So here, because of the irrigations and the weather condition, eventually every day I ended with a water loss. And here, the water loss is much less, and still I have my salt washed because I'm above the field capacity. This is an example of effective rain, because as you can see, the graph represents the soil moistures and the irrigation events, the bars with the irrigation events. But all of a sudden, I don't have any irrigation event, but there is something is happening. And I know that it was rain, but how do I know that it is an effective rain and I can postpone my next irrigation? You see that the graph crosses those lines that I just preset. So it is above the field capacity at the end of the day. You see that the moisture level is much higher. It means that the rain replaced the irrigation. The rain replaced the irrigation. I can skip my next irrigation. Now we'll show you another example. In this example, I have rain. I don't know right now because I don't have my soil moisture. I don't know if it is an effective rain or not, but it seems to be a nice rain. And when I present both soil moisture, irrigation events, and the rain events, first of all, I can see the gap, and I can see that I stopped irrigating once I have those rain events. But what happened with the soil moisture? Here I cannot tell because the resolution is not that good when I present all graphs in one chart or in one view. But if I want to focus on the soil moisture just to understand where I stand and if the rain was effective, when I present the soil moisture, when I focus on the NetaCap readings, I see that there is a very big decrease in the soil moisture. It means that even though it was raining and I decided to skip next irrigation because of the rain, eventually the water didn't penetrate the soil and there was a decrease, and probably the plant will suffer. So it's important to have both measurement. Also the rain, it was made by a local rain collector, so I can spread many rain collectors in my field, and then I will get the precise quantity of the rain in the specific location. And then I will be able to know if I can take it into account for my next irrigation. Now, this is an example of the NetaSense soil moisture sensor, a dendrometer, a trunk dendrometer, and irrigation events. The irrigation events are the blue bars. The red chart is the NetaSense soil moisture sensor in one depth, and the dendrometer is the green chart. Now you see that there is a kind of a growth here. There is a trend of growth. And here, all of a sudden, once there is a stopped irrigating or reduce the quantity, it seems to be an hydraulic problem here, probably. I wouldn't know, but this is the situation. You see that the movement is much bigger of the dendrometer, so the plant is reacting, and there is a maximum daily shrink much bigger than before. So this is the cross-reference data that I can get once I have both soil moisture and some plants reference, like here, the dendrometer. My last example will be a NetaCap installation. This is a 60 centimeter NetaCap installation. It was installed in a medium soil, but the values that I saw were not typical for this specific soil. And I decided that I assumed that the installation was not that good, and I reinstalled the sensor. And it's very important to understand, because normally I would look at the trend. I will look at the shape, the movement of those charts, and I will take my decision accordingly. But I do need the absolute values just to understand if the sensor is functioning well, if I install it in a good manner. It is especially good for the beginning. And along the way, if I know my field and I know the values, I understand the meaning of those values, I know that if I need to irrigate or not. What I mean is, if I know that in this specific place, 30 centimeter means that 30% means that I need to irrigate, once I see it, remember on the dashboard, I can have my leading sensor. Once I see the value, I know that I should irrigate or not. So these are the meaning of those values. But normally I would look at the trend. But here I'm saying again, I saw that something that it doesn't give me the absolute values I was expecting. So I reinstalled this sensor. And all of a sudden, all the values raised. So now I know that this is the values that I would expect to have, and I know that the installation is good. When you install sensor, a long sensor like the NetaCap, we cannot tell what's happening in the depth. So you have to be the installation is very critical. It should be a precise installation. I said 10 to 15 centimeters from the dripper, because it should be in the wetted area, and it should be well installed with no air gaps. If you have air gaps, it might reduce the values, the absolute values. So in this specific installation, it was a NetaCap, and I used slurry. Slurry is a mud, is something that is made from the specific soil that I took out when I digged to install the sensor. And I poured it to the hole, and then I pushed the sensor into the hole. So I made sure that there were no air gaps. And now the installation is good, and I can keep on working and counting on this measurement to set my next irrigation. Okay, this is basically my presentation. I hope it was not too detailed for most of you, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Now, if you have any question, I will be happy to answer.
Yes, Ifat, thank you very much. We have a few questions and about 10 minutes to answer them, so we'll do our best. And if we don't answer all the questions, we will make sure to answer all of them in the emails that you will receive later on. So let's start with the first one. Ifat, someone's asking if he has a 40-hectare farm, how many sensors do I need?
Okay, so in one of my slides, I talked about uniformity. And normally, it doesn't matter. I don't care about the size of the farm. Of course, if it's a huge farm, I would not count on only one device. But if the farm is uniform by means of the soil type, maybe you have the same crop, or if you have the same crop but different varieties, it's not the same. I mean that if it is all uniform, you can use two different two station measuring points, and it will be good, because I would not say less than one, less than two, because I would not like to have taken all my decision according to one station, but at least two. And if the farm is uniform, so you can stick to the two. If you have different crops, different varieties, you need to multiple the number of the devices. But the idea is it doesn't matter the size of the farm, it matters how uniform it is.
Thank you. I believe that's clear. Second one, Ifan, you mentioned that our portfolio has quite a few lengths and models of the NetaCap. So what is the most suitable length of a NetaCap sensor for orchards?
It depends on the root zone. It means that if you have a deep root zone, I would use the longer probe. And if you have a relative shallow, it doesn't mean it is in orchards. Normally for orchard, I would use between 60 to 80 centimeter probe.
All right.
I want to add something, Avi, just a second. I would like to emphasize the fact that NetaCap, it doesn't matter. You can use any length everywhere. But if you have a deep root zone, it's good to have a longer probe. And if you have a shallow root zone and you still use the longer probe, you have to take into account that it might influence, the installation will be much more difficult. And maybe you can never know what's going on in the depth. So if you can have the precise length of the sensor, it will be the best.
Okay. And can I leave the sensors in the soil during the winter time?
The sensor are meant to stay in the soil. The only sensor that I would recommend taking it out is the tensiometer, because it might break if you have a very cold winter. So you have the tensiometer is made of a water tube. It's a tube filled with water, so it might break the tube itself if it freezes. So besides the tensiometer, you can leave all the sensor in the soil.
Next one. Can you tell us a bit about how you are implementing new sensors into your portfolio?
Okay. When we hear that, or once there is a request for a new sensor, we are doing, first of all, we are doing our research to find the most suitable sensor in terms of price and first of all, price. We will take some of them and we'll start to test them. We have a agronomical department, we have the R&D department. We are checking first the performance of the sensor, how easy it is to install it, the ease of use. And once it is approved and from all aspects, performance, ease of use, and price, so then we implement it in the system. The R&D department is implementing it to integrate it into our devices.
Okay. What is the difference between the rain collector in the Davis weather station and the standalone rain collector? Why do I need it if I have a weather station?
The standalone rain collector can be spread very easily in the field. So also the weather station, but the weather station normally you would place it in one place. You can have several weather stations, and then but normally we'll not do it because it is much more expensive. So we brought the solution of the independent standalone rain collector, and then you can have many of them connected to the one in the field. And if you have a very big field, you can have many of them. And then, if you remember in my presentation, I showed you the impact of the rain collector. So you can adjust your irrigation according to the rain measurement, the local rain measurement. Normally, the weather station will be located close to the irrigation room or in one location in your farm, and the rain is very local. So this is the difference. The rain collector itself has no difference, but the needs to have the full weather station instead of having a simple solution that you can put everywhere in your field, that's the difference.
Thanks. That's clear. So we have 3 more minutes, so a couple more questions. Do I need or can I calibrate the sensors?
First of all, you can calibrate your sensors. There is a section in the cloud that you can do any offset that you wish to have. The only sensor that requires calibration is the tensiometer, because you have the water tube that influences the pressure. So there is a process for calibration, and that's the only one that you need to calibrate.
All right. And is there any limitation on the number of devices on a single farm?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Is there any limitation on the number of devices on the farm?
No, there's no limitation.
All right. Next one. Can I connect a sensor that is not part of the Netafim portfolio to the one?
Unfortunately, at this stage, no, because it requires a development of the R&D department. So no, only the sensors that are approved, and I presented them in the presentation, all our portfolio.
All right. And last one. Can I connect the Davis weather station to the GS1?
You cannot connect the Davis weather station. The Davis weather station can be connected to the MAX, directly to the MAX controller, and you can use it via API. but all the information will be presented on the same platform. On the GrowSphere platform, you can present weather station information and all the sensors and everything. But directly to the one, it cannot be connected.
Thank you, Ifat. I will just elaborate a little bit for those who don't know what is API. As Ifat mentioned, the Davis weather station can be connected directly to the Max controller with a cable. And if you don't have a Max controller, you can have an independent Davis weather station with its own transmitter, and all the data will be transmitted to the Davis cloud service. But we will import all the data. So as Ifan mentioned, all the data will be presented on your GrowSphere workspace as if it was connected to the GrowSphere 1. So at the end of the day, you have all your data in one place. I see we have a few questions that we have not answered, but again, we will answer all the questions in the email that will be sent to you in the next few days. And we reached the top of the hour, so I guess we can thank Ifat and thank all of you for all these 3 sessions. Quite an impressive attendance. And again, feel free to reach out at any time to any of the emails that will be included in the emails that we will send you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ifat.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.